issues involved with factory farming. However, far fewer understand the dangers posed by living near factory farms. In order to understand the shortcomings of manure containment on farms, it's important to understand how manure containment in households works. So as you can see here, a septic tank is depicted, and a septic tank is what most rural communities use. So as you can see, the waste is produced from the household and goes into the first tank of the septic system, where a filter blocks the solid waste from getting into the second tank. From the second tank, the liquid waste is pumped straight into the soil, which might sound alarming to you, but if the soil is healthy, the water that reaches the water table will be pure. Also, in the first tank, there are bacteria that are breaking down the solid waste, which means that the tank doesn't have to be pumped out. In order to ensure that the soil is in fact going to be filtering out the water effectively, the government passed the Clean Water Act in 1972. The Clean Water Act requires you to have your soil tested before you install a septic tank. It pretty much just ensures that your soil has all of the necessary components, which is gravel, clay, and sand. Additionally, it instilled tanks are a field size requirement, so it makes sure that the amount of soil you have can handle the liquid waste being produced by the household. And finally, inspections must be done every 3 years to ensure that no leakage is occurring. Some common misconceptions about septic tanks are that they need to be pumped out. That's actually a holding tank, but in either case, the liquid waste goes straight into the soil. Now, on the other hand, farms are, for the most part, exempt from the Clean Water Act, which means they don't have to have their soil tested. So the manure being sprayed on the fields may or may not be filtered by the soil. If it doesn't have the right components, it's certainly not. Additionally, they don't have to have their leakage checked, so there may be leaks that go unnoticed for years and years. In the past, this wasn't that big of a problem because farms were small and they were spread out over a large geographical area, so the soil could handle the amount of manure being spread on them. Also, in traditional farming, solid manure was used a lot more than liquid manure, so decomposers on the surface of the soil could break down the solid waste before it reached the water table. Now, in progressive agriculture, farmers prefer to utilize liquid waste because it's much more efficient for them. But it also seeps into the ground much more quickly, so the decomposers on the surface don't have time to break it down before it reaches the water table. Not to mention that the farms are becoming more concentrated. So as you can see, from 1982 to 2012, Wisconsin has seen almost a 33,000 farm decrease in just dairy alone, but the number of cows per farm has gone up 40% in the same time. And the name for these concentrated farms is AFOs, or animal feeding operations. An AFO is simply any farm with the minimum requirement of animal units. Animal units vary for species, so beef cattle, dairy cattle, swine, etc. They're all different minimum requirements. And also the animals must be confined for 45 days throughout the year. These days don't need to be consecutive, so living in Wisconsin, where we have harsh winters, almost every farm meets this requirement. Now, to make the designation of a CAFO, the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs states that an AFO must be inspected by the EPA, and the AFO must be found to be a significant contributor of pollutants to surface waters. Now, while there's only one registered CAFO in Door County, there are 15 major contributors of pollutants to surface waters in Kewaunee County. In 2016, the DNR compiled a list of contaminated waters for every county in Wisconsin. The only river in Door County to make it onto the list was the Anape River. On the other hand, all 3 rivers in Kewaunee County were placed onto the list. So the Anape River, the Twin River, and the Kewaunee River. It's also important to note that the only shared body of water between Door and Kewaunee County is in fact the Anape River. In each case, the contaminant responsible for impairing the water was phosphorus. Phosphorus is an inorganic compound abundant in cow manure, and it's what helps plants grow more rapidly. An inorganic compound is just any chemical compound with carbon in it. So why exactly is phosphorus bad to have in water if all it's doing is helping plants grow faster. Well, when the algae grows too fast, it sucks oxygen out of the water, leaving fish to suffocate. So in the natural life cycle of a plant, when it begins to decompose, it has to intake oxygen for that process, and it takes it out of the water. It might seem weird that algae, which produces 80% of oxygen on Earth, is actually taking oxygen out of the water, but just remember that oxygen being produced by algae is off-put into the air, and in this case it's being taken out of the water. So as you can see, there's a huge dead zone here in the Bay of Green Bay, right off of Durham-Kewaunee County. And the other problem with rapid algae growth is that it looks pretty gross. Tourists don't like to see contaminated surface waters, and in 2015 alone, $18.2 million were contributed to our county's economy just in tourism, so quite literally, our county cannot afford contaminated surface waters. Some people argue that while tourism helps our economy, agriculture does too, and they would be correct. However, CAFOs are changing the role that agriculture and farming play into our county's economy. The perk of CAFOs is that they produce much more efficiently, which means that we can buy our food at a reduced cost. However, they actually hurt local economies. They shove out these small family farms that help stimulate the local economy because they buy and sell local. CAFOs, on the other hand, import their products from huge corporations to keep their cost of production down, and likewise they export their products to large corporations. So the local economy isn't being stimulated at all. Other than just affecting tourism and fishing, contaminated surface waters are affecting your health. The most common effect of phosphorus on the body is kidney damage. However, there are far more startling effects of other pathogens found in common manure, like salmonella, which can cause fever, chills, diarrhea, or abdominal pain, and also children are more susceptible to salmonella than are adults. Also found in common manure is E. coli, which can cause intestinal infection, dehydration, and kidney failure, which can lead to death. In fact, every 1 in 20 cases of E. coli result in death. So when are you exposed to these harmful pathogens in cow manure? Well, anytime you're swimming or boating, and then also if you're just consuming fish or shellfish caught in local waters. Even if you decided to avoid all the wonderful aspects of living in Door County, like fishing or swimming, you're still exposed to harmful pathogens in your groundwater. In fact, there are 130 or more pathogens found in your groundwater when it's found to be contaminated. And the reason for this is that pathogens actually survive better in groundwater because it's cold and dark and damp, which is perfect for pathogens to survive. You might also be thinking that there's no way a CAFO in Kewaunee County could be affecting your groundwater here in Door County, but wells in Door County are on the deeper end of any wells in the Midwest, ranging anywhere from 200 to 600 feet deep, so your water is likely coming from miles and miles around. Knowing all of the risks of living near CAFOs, you're probably wondering what your options are. The CDC recommends regularly checking well water, but these tests cost about $150 each. So over a 10-year period, you'd be spending $18,000 of testing on your water. Your other option would be to install a reverse osmosis filtration system. Now this is more affordable for a rural community, costing only $1,200 to $1,800 per home. However, keep in mind that this only filters your drinking water. Your skin is still exposed to harmful pathogens when you shower or wash your hands and face in the sink. After hearing about all the harmful effects of living near CAFOs, some people would just say that they would simply move away. However, this is not a realistic option for homeowners that live near CAFOs. The CDC, or Center for Disease Control, says that within 1/10 of a mile from a CAFO, you can experience an 88% decrease in property value. This means that your home, once worth $100,000, can now only be sold for $12,000. A homeowner that experiences such an extreme deficit simply can't afford to move away. In 2012, Kennard Farms proposed to expand their herd to just under 7,000 cows, and I'd like to show the community's reaction to this proposal.
It's our big story at 10. Homeowners in Kewaunee County challenging a permit granted to a dairy farm. The DNR approved the plans, but neighbors say the new mega farm will contaminate their water. NBC 26's Alex Hagan is live at 10 with both sides. Alex?
Stacy, in 2012, the DNR approved a permit for Kennard Farms to expand to more than 6,000 cows at its facility in the town of Lincoln. But people nearby say this will pollute their water and harm their health. The small town of Lincoln empty tonight. Many at Green Bay's City Hall discussing an expansion project in the town that many neighbors say will ruin their way of life.
You can't brush your teeth. You can't cook with it.
Linda Cushart and 4 other petitioners say their town already has problems with polluted well water, and a permit to expand Kennard Farms to more than 6,000 cattle producing 70 million gallons of manure a year will make it worse.
I will fight as long as I can to try and get us clean air and water, something we don't have now.
The hearing centered around the DNR's decision to approve the permit,
on the basis that they meet the standards that are in law.
Gretchen Wheat of the DNR says the design of this site among the most secure in the state. She doesn't expect leakage from the facility.
This site does have a liner that exceeds minimum criteria on that basis.
If approved, the dairy farm would become the 5th largest in the Badger State. Now, representatives for Kennard Farms tell me the facility meets or exceeds all standards. Tomorrow, the hearing continues with a public comment period and wraps up on Friday. Alex Hagan, NBC 26.
All right, so as you heard in the video, Kennard Farms was granted permission to expand their herd on the basis that their manure containment systems met the set criteria. However, from 2010 until 2016, DNR records actually show 4 infractions, one near a stream and the other on land with sinkholes. In both of these cases, the manure would have direct contact with groundwater, so although the manure containment systems looked good on paper, there were obviously some issues with it that were never addressed. Finally, after hearing of all the risks to your health as well as the health of your environment, you're probably wondering what you can do to protect yourself and the county that you love. First of all, it's important to raise awareness. Change is never going to be made if nobody knows about it. And you can do this by joining environmental groups, which will not only raise awareness, but protest things like herd expansions on Kennard Farms. You could also buy local. So by buying local, you're not only supporting your local economy, but you're also protecting your health as well as the health of the environment. And finally, you could just consume fewer animal products. This doesn't mean that you would go vegetarian or vegan. It just means you could simply go 1 or 2 meals a month or a week without eating dairy or meat. This also doesn't mean that you have to stop supporting agriculture. You could still support your local farmers by buying plant-based products. At the end of the day, it's easy to blame CAFOs for the water issues we have here in Door County. However, as informed citizens, it's our job to protect all waters in Door County and therefore protecting the safety of our environment and our citizens. Thank you.